Good question. So what's for that to play?
You think IT can help?
So are we ready?
Yes.
Finally. Sorry about all that. All ready to increase my temper. All right. So we'll come to order here. Sorry for the delay.
Welcome to GPSC. The meeting's going to start now, and thanks for being here.
Can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda? So motion. Is there a second? Any opposed? All right. Seeing none opposed, motion passes. I get a motion for the approval of the minutes, which are posted on the YouTube account from the stream 2 weeks ago. So motion. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. All right, so old business, everyone. We have to discuss the proposal for the increase to the general student fee for the information technology portion. I believe I have a little bit on this for today. I believe those stats are right. We heard the presentation 2 weeks ago on the proposal for the increase to the general student fee. See, I can't read that from my seat, but essentially $3 increase for the information technology portion, going from $7 to $10 per credit hour. It would take the total general student fee from $117 per credit hour to $120 per credit hour. I requested that you go back to the students and the programs departments that you represent to solicit some feedback on what position GPSC could take for this proposed increase. I will entertain the floor to any comments, questions, concerns, recommendations, submissions from students in your programs.
I would like to add to the floor, and maybe you can assist me. So you had mentioned that the expansion of our technology we have not done this since, what year was that?
When the fee was created in 2000, it was 6 or 9. Was it 7?
So we have not had an increase of this fee since 2006 or 2009. One of those inverse. So almost a decade has gone by, if not more, without any increase towards this. But yet the cost has risen, right? So the expenses. So when you're looking at just the basics of economics, to be able to maintain and sustain what we currently have, but also to expand that, we need to expand what we're providing to this regarding our student fees. Just want to clarify, right?
Yes. I think one of the things looking at peer institutions and seeing what is available to the students, we wonder if we're missing the boat on some of those things that might be more appealing to students and attract students, but moreover, students that are here to be useful to them in what they're doing.
And there might be, even though some people have this, or if there might be a few people who weren't able to attend last week. So if you could also just summarize, what this will, I know it won't be the same type of presentation, but a good summary of what the expectations are and how this will improve technology on campus.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things that you can see on the fact sheet that we've provided is that there are a number of things already being paid for by the fee. Those costs continue to rise, but we also are finding efficiencies where we can to kind of control that where we can. But what we have heard through various ways, whether that's anecdotes or suggestions from students that would show up in, depending on how you want to characterize it, complain or critically or constructively criticize, that basically the cost of software, even though that software that's available at a student discount is sometimes unmanageable, that Wi-Fi in some parts of campus is spotty at best, everything else that we put here in terms of a list. I think one of my biggest care about, just given my portfolio with IIT, is this idea of a solution hub, a center where we take the call center that is tucked in a corner in Northwest Annex that has probably our best people, the people that can relate to what your outcomes and goals are and tell you what technology can enable that for you. They're sort of sequestered in a corner, and if we could get those front and center, a place where you can access them more readily, it would serve you better, as opposed to currently you can only access them via telephone or chat. Walk-up center in Morris is a place where you can walk up and get help. Sometimes you probably will get a great answer there. Sometimes you'll get some fellow that was just putting in a hard drive and he'll go, well, I don't know, use your favorite Saturday Night Live skit to substitute the interpersonal skills that may or may not exist there. If any of my dear employees are hearing this, they'll probably say, that's not me. Well, anyway, I think that making those sorts of things available in a more modern way at the Apple Store is probably a model that I would suggest there to enhance the security that protects your data, protects not just your email, your access to that sort of stuff, but also the information that the university collects and maintains about you. Is important to you, I would assume. It's certainly important to me as an employee. Those are areas that we know that we have needs. I don't know if
Oh, no, that's great. No, I think that's a good summary of just things that, one, like I said, there hasn't been an increase since the mid-2000s, potentially, so over a decade. And that this will be something that supports both undergraduate and graduate students. I understand that, I believe USG is voting on this evening as well.
They are not. They have determined that they're going to do a Senate resolution, and I can't remember if they specifically said that it's at their next meeting or the following
Gotcha.
meeting, but they are still at the point of collecting information
Okay.
for their constituents.
Yeah, because that's good. I did want to know where they were on their process of voting as well. I know this will have a great impact on our graduate students, since we teach at various locations across campus and having to use the Wi-Fi to connect to our media and our technology.
And just as an aside, won't impact what you're doing tonight, I do want to make you aware that we will be sending to you guys some information about a date and time for an open IT forum that's happening next week, where we invite you to come and share your input, ideas, and suggestions, criticisms of what we currently offer and what you would like to see us to try to accomplish.
Does anybody have any, who wasn't here last time, any questions or clarifications that you need answered this time?
Could I say something?
Yes, please.
Well, one of the things that I don't think is maybe coming across well is that the money that we have now, as you said, it has not changed in 10 years plus or minus. And you all know, if you had a computer that you bought 10 years ago, you would need a different one. The times have changed, the systems have changed, the technology has changed. And so that's where IT finds itself, in that we keep things running. We stay at a maintenance level. We make sure that when you go and turn on your computer, it actually works. We have the Wi-Fi to work it, have the software to work it, and it will be there tomorrow, and it will work at whatever level it does. But as technology increases, for us to move to that next level, we just don't have the funds. And that next level of upgrade is really what makes the difference between having technology as a utility versus having it as a tool that will help you achieve what you want to achieve and get what you need from the internet and your software and your people around the world. And so that's what we need, where the money is. And we're coming from a department that really thinks about the specs and the tools and the instruments, but I watch them every day struggle with how are we going to put together the next level of advantage for the students when
I think that's all from the floor. I know you're just returning, but
Yeah. Well, so if you remember from the meeting 2 weeks ago, as far as proposed increases to the student fees, they're looking to, in particular, the student constituency bodies for guidance on this. That is not something that is usually considered good practice to bring forward proposed increases to student fees or tuition without the support of students. It's part of the reason for the presentation, the notice of those. So insofar that this is on the agenda for today, it is to consider what the position of the Graduate and Professional Student Council is the representative body of graduate and professional students, those of whom you are to solicit information so that we can make a representative decision on any potential position that we have for a proposed increase to that fee. In effect, the officers of the organization request your guidance to the council for what to do on submitting any statement for the graduate and professional student position on this. This is literally one of our core functions. Derek.
I motion, or I move that the GPSC be approved the budget.
I second the motion.
Motion seconded. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. Any discussion of how to express said approval? No? My recommendation would just be a statement on behalf of the Graduate and Professional Student Council from the Executive Board, thereby basically the executive voice of the officers itself. I would make a friendly amendment to that motion. So it's so being, or I guess, no, we don't. Yeah, friendly amendment. Yeah, absolutely.
So what happens if GPSC votes yes and USG votes no? Then you have to divide it student by groups. Like if you're willing to have a meeting with, I guess, USG as well, kind of see where they have a collective response.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
I don't think we need one. We're here for the Graduate and Professional Student Council. Graduate response to this potentially is we support it. If they don't support it, that's something we'll come to. We'll cross that river mountain. At least the IT department knows it needs to. I'm not sure that's quite a reaction there.
They vote nay. And then we have to get, like you said,
If they did vote nay, should that alter our decision and our opinions of how it benefits the university as well as us as graduate students?
Is that true? Because us over here on
Because it's certainly a motion of recommendation.
yeah, I agree, but we're making generalizations.
I just see an issue like if that's not a competition in that body.
Is this the student trustees? Is it coming from you or as an individual?
Oh, this as an individual trustee, I'm not having to vote on like that part. So this is just a student.
Point. Is there any way that we can have the IT chairperson actually go to the undergraduate association and kind of lobby that in order to kind of quell your concerns? And we can kind of do that, and then that will allow us to take a vote tonight. And then also, because they are still trying to make up their minds, actually go then and
Well, you said that they motioned to have a resolution completed in the upcoming or discussed in the upcoming meeting.
It'll be the December scheduled meeting, not the special on November 9th. Yeah.
You also said there's a forum.
Yes, so OIT is hosting a forum next week, date, time, place to be determined, but an open forum to provide a place for students. Just come and ask questions or, point out what's working for them, what's not. And also discuss this fee. Absolutely. Absolutely, that fee on front and center, for sure. And what I think I understood from Judy Marshall last time we met was that the Board of Trustees definitely, I think they were inclined to not entertain it if the student body representatives were not in favor. I don't recall her saying whether or not it was a slam dunk if they were in favor. So if you're split, I don't know what that also implies either. But
And so this serves as a recommendation to be brought forward to the Board of Trustees. Our vote does not determine that. It's something that would be brought, and just the Board of Trustees then vote on based, and then having the input of the student bodies, correct?
They won't entertain it without your support, and what they choose.
And this will come to motion to vote once we agree upon and vote upon this as a body that represents graduate professional students. This then would be brought to the December meeting that be held on this campus. So you would need a collective vote from us or collective resolution of sorts prior to that December meeting, correct? All right.
So if USG is postponing their vote and we have until December as an informative forum, would it be beneficial for us to postpone our vote until the next meeting?
Our next meeting would be November 13th. Is that right?
13th, yeah.
Yeah. And so if we came to collective vote at that time, would that give you enough time to then turn around and present that to the Board of Trustees? Okay, so we understand that we have that potential extended timeline. It gives us the opportunity to see and observe the forum next week. I don't know. The motion's still on the floor, though.
Motion is still on the floor, is under discussion. That motion being to have the executive board author a statement for submission to the Board of Trustees stating support for the increased fee.
Move to vote on that motion. Move to vote. Oh, sorry. Move to vote.
So returning to the question. Second, obviously. All right. Yeah. He doesn't want to withdraw the motion. Motion has been seconded. We are currently under discussion. We're going to move to a vote. So all those in favor of approving the motion for the executive board to author a statement expressing the support of the $3 increase to the general student fee for the purposes of increasing the information technology portion of the general student fee, and submitting that for the consideration of the Board of Trustees. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Ask for abstentions.
Any abstentions? Is that 3 with 2 here?
Yeah.
Seeing 3 abstentions, 2 noes, and the majority in favor, we consider that motion passed.
Excellent. Motion passed.
There we go. Good.
Could we ask for a contact so we can invite whoever would like to come?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming back tonight.
Thank
Thanks for the flyer. Yeah, absolutely. There we go.
Appreciate it.
No worries.
No,
worries.
no, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your support. You will try to do everything to make technology better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I need to keep moving. We are a little behind. So new business tonight, interim chancellor appointment, some consideration of a statement to the interim president, Dr. Dorsey, and SIU Board of Trustees. So in a couple of meetings that I've attended, I've heard the interim system president So that is the president of the university that basically works out of sort of works out of the Stone Center here in Carbondale. But I believe Dorsey may live in Springfield. I'm not sure. But came to a couple of meetings to give some guidance since the chancellor has passed as to the process that will go forward in appointing an interim chancellor for the Carbondale campus. And as a part of that, there is a special Board of Trustees meeting that has been called for November 9th to consider the process for the selection of the interim chancellor. I have registered to provide comments in the course of that meeting, and we can also submit a written statement to the Board of Trustees and the system president as to the determination or any conditions associated with the process for appointing an interim chancellor. One of the big things that has come out of how that process will go, or I guess the interim chancellor's position in general, is the idea that basically what we're looking at is right now we have an interim president for the system, and then now we're going to also have an interim chancellor that runs all of the executive affairs of this campus. And we're trying to start a search for a full-time system president. And Dr. Dorsey, as he said, has no designs on being the full-time president of the system or being the full-time chancellor of our university. So what I've understood about this entire process is that for an interim chancellor's appointment at our campus, we're looking at having that interim chancellor that is appointed for anywhere from 16 to 18 months. So as the search and appointment of the full-time president of the SIU system can be hired. The intent is to fill the system president's position by the end of this summer. So basically begin and complete and then appoint the new system president by the end of this summer, and then to complete a search for a full-time chancellor candidate by the end of the following summer. So 2020. So the interim chancellor that would likely be taking over early into the spring semester, just in a couple of months, will be in that position from like January 2019 until July, August 2020. Now, insofar that the process of that selection and appointment of an interim chancellor will be discussed by the board on November 9th. Like I said, I've signed up to give some comments as a part of that, as well as we can submit any kind of written statement that we wish to the board, as we have that right as a constituency body at this campus. And I think that that's something that we should consider. And so I wanted to bring this new business to council for you guys to give some input. Yeah.
So do we know why they are opting to go for a short-term appointment and then search for the longer-term person? Like, why have that year-long order?
The comment that has been provided in the remarks that I've been present for from interim president Dr. Dorsey is the idea that likely a chancellor that is coming into this university to do that in a full-time, long-term status would like to know who their boss is.
So we have to find a president.
Yes. The searches and the processes for conducting those searches will go on at the same time. So it's not like we'll wait to start forming the search committee and listing the job and everything until there's literally the full-time president appointed, is what has been explained to me. But yes, the intention is to have a full-time, non-interim SIU president replacing Dorsey by the end of summer 2019. And then once that president is in place, you can basically finalize a selection of a full-time chancellor who would then assume the chancellorship with the new academic year starting August 2020. So it would likely be like a July or June beginning that contract, that chancellorship.
So the new business is just addressing what we want as far as a statement to our board trustees. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, or if we want to at all, or if there's any guidance. I mean,
so are we suggesting how like it's communicated or the different forms that are available to students? Is that what you're seeking?
well, so in what, a week's time, I'm going to get up, go to the board of trustees. They're going to be discussing the idea of who's going to be running this entire campus for the next basically 2 years. Do we want to have any input into what that individual does, what that individual values, how that process goes, whether they're going to reach out to us as anything as a part of who they determine takes over that position? What are the qualities of the individual that will actually be in that position? How they should interact with us? What is something that should be on the mind of the persons making that decision? Anything.
So I'm going to go ahead and speak on behalf of the room. I imagine that a lot of people probably want that. What I'm asking is, what do you want to happen right now? Do you want people to say this from the floor, or do you want us to go ahead and write something that we can then present to the body to then decide upon those words and articulate it further from there?
I'm not going to bring a written statement. That's not an effective use of anyone's time.
Well,
What I am going to do is solicit feedback from individuals that should be paying attention to the affairs of the campus so that we can guide the actual representative voice of graduate and professional students. And so I am here asking for that.
So you have a week to present this, correct? Is that what you
Yes.
said? All right, so we can either do it in this room or we could do it by email, but then eventually it has to come to the executive board to write something, to present something collectively.
Yeah,
That's
that would be
not
one
that, right?
path. Yeah. I mean, in the absence, basically, I'm asking the council for guidance on how we'd like to proceed. I'm going to make a statement one way or another. The amount of input you all, and then as a connection to that, the persons you represent have in the say of what I will say in the course of that meeting is being determined right now. It will be determined next week when I discuss it with the members of the executive board. And then I will take what I have gotten as a part of that advising process to the Board of Trustees to submit either a verbal and or a written statement on behalf of graduate and professional students. Sir.
Open the floor for discussion, or you good?
Uh,
Move to open the floor for discussion.
Absolutely.
So I want to know how we, second, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open floor agenda item for the most part.
Okay, cool. I want to know, how do we get somebody who represents all the schools so that one school isn't just kind of left off to its own and kind of forgotten about? I understand that you're asking for input, but I have questions.
No, it's fine. Well, if I understand the nature of your question correctly, it's the idea of an interim chancellor that will
Come in and not just baby one specific school, like their baby is business, so they put all their attention into business
Yeah.
and forget about zoology and
Yeah.
the law school and the med program.
That would be in that document, right? So I get these board things. So there's a lot of letters we received. We received recently that says, okay, you're looking to appoint the chancellor now, and also the president. This is what we think.
Right. So is that what you're trying to do right now with us?
Yeah. Insofar someone's going to make a decision about who runs this place for 18 months in the next like 60 days, 45 days, potentially week or two, we have a voice in that process. I will be there November 9th to express that voice as the president of the organization that represents all graduate and professional students. I'm asking for the input and how that statement gets crafted. Yes.
I'd like to see an interim president who won't ignore or sort of, I want some focus on graduate students as a whole, graduate professional students. I mean, I feel like quite often we are pushed to the side for undergraduate affairs, and we are an undergraduate campus majority. But I would like to see a focus on even, I realize this is going to be an interim position, but still be looking for this permanent chancellor eventually. But I'd like to see someone who maybe has background dealing with graduate students on an administrative level, or has taken some steps to improve the lives of the situation of graduate students at other institutions.
And even, I understand that they won't need a permit, but at least that's laying the framework for the next person.
Yes, absolutely. And as far as that goes, that's another aspect of it. It will be a less direct affair, but insofar the full-time president for the system will be appointed prior to a full-time chancellor at this campus being appointed, the actual process and determination for the system president will have an impact on the search process for finding a full-time chancellor in and of itself. And so I'm equally, if not more concerned or interested in the processes that will determine the outcome of finding a new system president, as that will have an impact on the determination for the full-time chancellor 2 years basically from now, or a year and a half from now. I saw a hand, yeah.
One thing that I'm very curious about and I'm interested in is making sure that we have someone either in the interim and for the permanent position is someone who is very solution oriented. It's no secret that Southern Illinois University as a campus has been facing some financial problems with enrollment and just budgetary restrictions in general. And then thinking about just the school-wide Southern Illinois University with Carbondale and Edwardsville, I would like to see someone who comes to the table already with some solutions in mind. And not someone that's just gonna fill that spot and allow the situation to become worse.
Do you have more to add?
No, I don't.
No, sorry.
I just think our statement needs to verbalize something about like this individual values diversity between the cultures that we have at the school and then the different like educational departments that we have. That way, like Ramiro was saying, none of our educational departments are pushed to the side, and then none of our individuals. We had some issues with that here recently.
That was nice to be a concert.
Yeah. Sir.
Somebody that's gonna probably prioritize or preference faculty hires over administrative hires, since there's not a lot of faculty. And not just in stuff.
It's definitely a good point, yes. Yes.
I would like to see somebody who's recommended by the people that they've worked with previously.
Actually, that's,
I think it'd be cool if we could get that reference sheet and like call the other graduates at schools that they've worked at before. Like if our GPSC exec people could reach out to whatever their equivalent people are, and be like, hey, how is this person? And they're like, they suck. Say, okay, cool, we won't hire them.
I was going to
Yeah.
comment. So thinking of in a recent history when we've had an interim chancellor, that person was simply appointed without being having opportunity to speak in public forums for people to know them. You could say a lot, you can know, but until you have those interactions, until you have the Q&As, until they get in front of the different bodies that they're going to be representing and speaking for, we don't truly know anything about this person except for who they are on paper. So what I would like is rather than just an appointment from the Board of Trustees without consideration of the various constituents on campus, I would like to see open forums first before the finalization of that appointment.
I can guarantee you that will be done.
Wasn't done last time.
Huh?
Wasn't done with Caldwell last time,
I wasn't at
but it wasn't done that time.
I can guarantee you, and I'll also share with you as well, the letter that I've shared with the board, and what I'm hearing from students, both undergraduate and graduate, for what we want that person to interim to the goals we want them to achieve. I think a lot of this we discussed, a lot of you have all said some of the other points. Yeah. That's one of my biggest things, as well as the rest of the Carbondale trustee, is to get that person, whoever that is, out there to, as an introduction, to let them know that this is who's representing you, and here's my face. Because of the turmoil we've had. So if I'm saying the tread we've had every day.
And so the last thing I'll add to this item, perhaps before we move on, is the notion that also the process through which any statement is constructed, essentially, is something that you guys can provide guidance on. I would recommend strongly against the idea of writing one and then bringing it before everyone here and going through it. We also don't have the time unless we call an emergency meeting or something to the effect.
It's not that. I mean, I'm just thinking of how John would do these things, and he would just say, bring it to a vote. This is what we're going to present collectively.
Oftentimes we voted on a statement we hadn't set eyes on, though, and it's just like you can't approve a statement that hasn't been written. But you guys can approve a process whereby the executive board collectively approves a statement that is authored in the course of making a statement that hits on these points. Like, that can actually be done. The council can't give approval of a statement that hasn't been written.
You can also just have the council vote to have the executive board create it on their behalf.
And so if you have any guidance, you want to make a motion, anything like that as far as the process. I mean, personally, the process I'm going to use is, one way or another through the executive board, we'll come together, try and write a statement. I'll get their feedback, hopefully get it in a consensus, if not unanimous approval for that statement, and I'll use that as the basis of what I say verbally and then make a submission in writing to the board.
I still motion that.
So motion, seconded. Any discussion of that? Discussion. Well, the motion will call for the executive board in its capacity to act on that written statement. And so you could reach out to members of the executive board, going back to your constituency, to try and have some submission of things that come from students within the programs that we're representing is a part of that process. And this is what I mean. There's more than one way to skin this cat, right? It's just like, that's the process I was going to use, but that's not necessarily the process we want to use.
I'd like to make an amendment to my motion.
Absolutely.
So I would like the executive board to take into consideration to make a statement on behalf of GPSC, but I would also like a day or two for us to reach out to our constituents and shoot emails to members of the executive board taking into consideration of developing this statement.
I would ask for a deadline of Saturday morning at 8 a.m. You're graduate students. I know you're all up at night, so 8 a.m. Yeah, I do not have what all that motion is at this point in time anymore. But with an 8 a.m. Saturday deadline for submission of recommendations, comments, concerns, points to emphasize, anything in the construction of a statement by the executive board for my delivery and statement at the upcoming Board of Trustees meeting, that friendly amended motion being up for our approval. Are we ready to move to a vote? All right. All in favor of that motion? Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right. Fantastic. Thank you all. I'm just trying to get you guys guidance as far as what to do procedurally, the parts to include. Yeah.
So I understand a lot is going on, and some of us are new, so maybe that we're not really common because we don't know exactly what's going on. So have patience with us.
No, it's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't say it hateful. I'm just saying there's just like, you gotta give me instructions. Otherwise, it's like we have, I think, the imperative to provide those comments. The same is true of the technology fee, right? It's just like the absence of a statement is equally as strong as the statement that we make. And so taking the time to think about what it is that we need to say, what are those parts not to say. There's been a couple of things that I would not have thought of to include as a component of that statement that have already been said. And so it's just like, while it might seem a little crazy to speak up in the course of the meeting, not necessarily knowing whether you should or shouldn't, it's just like, that is why you are here, to participate in this. Because like I said, I signed up to speak at that meeting before we even came to this meeting. Because that's my duty, to show up and speak for graduate and freshman students,
Can I make
one
a
way or
motion of
another.
order,
Yeah.
That we just continue with our agenda?
Sure. But yeah, I appreciate that some of us are new. And that's the problem. In making sense out of what ultimately is a weird business, poorly explained. All right, so the next agenda item that we've got is the craziness for the academic year 18-19 strategic. They will also have a presentation for the graduate and professional student survey that we have been conducting through GPSC, and then an overview of some things for the executive board, some changes to the way that the executive board will be structured and functioning. So for this, we'll try and do questions after each of these itemized agenda items under this blanket agenda item. And I'll try and go through this presentation as quickly as I can. So in general, right, we've talked some in the last few meetings about the Graduate and Professional Student Council, what we're about, what we're trying to do. And so some of that will be reaffirmed in the course of this presentation, and hopefully what we've got set up for goals that we're going to try and accomplish this year are doing that as well. But I've got this one thing that statement that actually comes from something that I talked about at the end of the last term, the idea of what we ultimately require from the university are these academic opportunities, fair treatment, necessary continuing support and mentorship, effective professional development while we're here so that we can actually matriculate as highly developed, competent, accomplished, competitive graduates of respective programs. And so in that document that I emailed to you guys, I did give you a little bit of a review of some of the accomplishments that we had last year. Ultimately, in the course of the year last year, some of the contention related to the reorganization and some of the issues that came before the Board of Trustees, some issues with our previous chancellor and the aspects of shared governance. Tons and tons of activity as far as in the engagement and participation in the overall governance of the university. And so, collected a number of feedback assessments from department constituencies, took resolutions to oppose some of the reorganization activities, provided any amount of feedback to the Board of Trustees, the university as a whole. We also resolved the censure and ultimately vote no confidence in the chancellor. We've also continued our engagement in council, a number of different initiatives. I'm going to kind of skim over some of the other aspects and stats about what was going on in the council. You've got the presentation that was emailed to you a couple of weeks ago. Big accomplishments that we're going to hear about today, the graduate and professional student survey that we did. We have a strategic plan for the graduate school that is in part being used to develop the plan for goals this year. But let's see, continued support with student activity fees. Keep moving forward just for time. Continued provision of our key programs is one of the essential functions of the Graduate and Professional Student Council. So in this part of that packet, this part of the presentation itself, is the idea of we've got two essential functions of the Graduate and Professional Student Council. We just went through an exercise of the one that comes after this slide. The other aspect is the disbursement of the student activity fees. If you can remember that from some of the sheets that were at the beginning of this year, trying to orient folks to the Graduate and Professional Student Council. So the principal way that we do that is through our career development reimbursement awards. The student fee allocation board for resident student event funding, and then our annual research awards. In addition to that, our continued advocacy, so as the official sanctioned and recognized constituency body within the governance of the university, GPSC acts as that representative of the student voices for graduate and professional students. Pretty much all administrative and governance issues will come before the university. That's why we get all the committee appointments that we have. That is why we make statements to the board of trustees on things like whether or not they're going to increase fees, who should actually be in charge of the university. That's why we have participation in graduate council, as graduate students get to participate in the governance of the graduate degree programs that ultimately some of us are enrolled in, and all of us are enrolled in one of them, right? The essential aspects of graduate and professional student council, the distribution of that fee, and our representative and advocacy function for graduate and professional students. But the organization on the whole is rather challenged by a number of different things, most of which relates to just basic human resources and organizational things. And since that we're run by volunteers, most of us haven't been in these positions very long. We all have competing interests insofar we're in graduate programs, while also trying to do these things. We're in a council, which at times is wonky or difficult or challenging to get things done. So, some things that end up arising as a part of that I thought would be interesting to bring up. The idea of lack of continuity, frequency of dissolution, and sort of a lack of pragmatism. Ends up being challenging in what we try to do. And I feel like these are things that we should appreciate, take into context, and then try to move beyond. In the sense that continuity, oftentimes things don't necessarily come together very well, as we have a lot of turnover, as we don't have necessarily a lot of time to maintain the processes that we have in place. We're not always interacting with one another. For instance, how many of you have interacted with anyone else from council in the capacity as a graduate and professional student affairs, like our council affairs, in the last week? Like come together to talk about stuff before graduate and professional student council in the last week. One?
Talking about it outside of the meeting. I'm like, let's have a meeting with.
Yeah, outside of meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, that's good. That's not a bad thing, that's good. But what I can say is, like, most of you, I don't necessarily see all that often, right? I see you at the council meetings. Some of you I see at other types of meetings. Some of you I see in executive. Some of you I am lucky enough to schedule a meeting with in the course in between our two council meetings. But right, this is like, it adds to a lot of sort of lack of continuity. Problematic that the idea of experiencing frustration, conflict, struggles, competing interests, feelings of alienation is a part of it. And then sort of just a loss of pragmatism that has happened in the past. Sort of not having clear definition of goals, the way that we can go about accomplishing those, action plans, and accountability to achieve them. So, perhaps some cool things that you could take out of what was in that document, at least I like to think so, are these sort of three principles for going forward, trying to think about strategically what we're going to do. And it's the idea that the value of our actions is ultimately found in what we contribute to the persons that are affected by it, and not necessarily the scale of those. That in an organization that is limited in a number of different ways by resources, whether it's money, whether it's expertise, whether it's time, we're not going to be able to do giant, big, great things. But we can do things that value a great deal to those that are affected by them. So the value that we add to students in the things that we do ends up mattering more than the scale of those actions. By establishing some stake in what it is that we're trying to do, we're going to get persons to care a lot more than what we're doing and trying to make the change that we maybe advocate for. In other words, just like, if you have a suggestion about something, but then you're not willing to actually participate in the solution to that, persons are far less likely to take you seriously than the idea of, I have this idea, I want to help you see it in reality. Put stake in actual solutions rather than presenting a possibility of a solution and then saying more or less I have no time for that. And ultimately, the most valuable, meaningful, powerful things that you can do as a part of the Graduate Professional Student Council actually come as a part of the things that you do outside of here. Our business meetings are just that. They're business meetings. It's where we make decisions on process, statements, decisions that we have to make. It's not where we get things done. It's where we can hear collectively the information about what's going on so that we can make decisions on the affairs that come before the council. But it's not ultimately where the action is. It's not the things that we'll do that make a difference. It's the decisions that then initiate the stuff that will actually go on for that to make a difference. So that statement again, the idea of what we kind of ultimately need. So what does that mean? It means basically our task, our aim, should be about the idea of how we marshal GPSC's resources and other assets of the university to best realize the idea of what we need. We need great programs. We need great mentorship. We need great professional development. So, as far as a guiding mission for this year, what do I write? The idea of engaging, directed, aggressive action, investing in and building GPSC and SIUC's capacities to develop, expand, and improve core areas of academic opportunities to ensure substantive and effective support of graduate and professional students in order to provide excellent professional and personal development. So, insofar that we do that, please take note for the following areas of improvement. Contempt's pretty dysfunctional. We can debate, we can critique, we can have disagreements, but contempt is not really productive towards outcomes that are progressive. Just not. We can't overpromise and underdeliver. In other sense, we got to follow through with the expectations that we actually set, which means sometimes you have to make a reasonable expectation in order to follow through. To stop rubber banding. In the past, GPSC has achieved some pretty great things by the efforts of very determined and very capable individuals. But when they transition out of service in Graduate and Professional Student Council, it is really hard to pick up all of the space that they left behind them to continue that on. And anyone that's been involved in the Graduate and Professional Student Council in the last couple of years, I'm sure you have at least 2 individuals that you can think about in that capacity. And so thinking about it as an organization, how do we do things to keep that from happening? What does that mean about how we make progress? How we build programs and organizational systems to actually respond to that need? The idea that critique is incomplete. So you make a proposal, it's great, but get stake in the game. Be a participant in the solution. And you know what's the coolest about that? Is that means you actually get to define how that thing will go on after probably you're not even there anymore. Like one of the great things about any program where you take a stake in the development of the solution in a very practical and material way is that you actually make a difference in the delivery of that. It's an opportunity. Along with that, the idea of making the ask. So articulate the outcome you are seeking and structure your entire process around that. It's essentially, what is the outcome you want? And then make everything target focused to that. So some initiatives then for this year that were in that document, the idea that we're going to continue to provide those key aspects of the Graduate and Professional Student Council. Our CDRAs, the FAB funding for RSO events, the research awards. Do our best to continue to provide those. Our continued advocacy on behalf of graduate and professional students, continue that. The 2019 Graduate and Professional Student Survey was originally developed to be a survey that reoccurs over a number of different years. And so this being the potential second year, continue to do that. Standardize, improve some of GPSC's bureaucracy, broader membership and representatives in the council, student rights, well-being, and treatment, whether that's academic or non-academic aspects of your experience, your education, your time with the university, and expand GPSC programming and develop better oversight on the delivery of programs, GPSC or non-GPSC. So ultimately how this translates into things is the idea of a few areas of goals. So we need to have a balanced budget. We have not had a balanced budget for 2 years. We have either overspent of the cash on hand or overspent for the student fee income that we have received for 2 years. It means essentially we have not ended a year since June 2016 with a budget that is in the black, essentially. So we have to balance the budget. That is something that we have been working on since really the summer to establish some better practices and better oversights, think about how we can go about managing the debt that we have from the previous year, and also establishing a fiscal policy itself. Second goal is rebooting our communications. The website has been a pet peeve of mine. I don't like the way that it works, in particular that it's not responsive. It's just super, super annoying to me. I think it makes it hard for individuals to actually get information about what Graduate and Professional Student Council does, the resources that we make available, as well as we can do a better job communicating all of this across the campus more generally. So we should reboot our communications as well as our records management. I don't know how many of you or your constituents were affected by the idea of certain documents being down on the website and the linking, which is actually in part related to a problem of mine in breaking some of those links on our survey, but nonetheless, how we go about doing these things. Part of this is the idea of actually establishing someone on the executive board for communication affairs, someone that is specifically charged with the directorship of how GPSC does its communications. And trust me, I am not the best person for that. I think you have suffered through enough meetings with me to know that. So the Graduate and Professional Student Survey. We conducted our first survey last year. It was a project I led as the Vice President for Graduate School Affairs. We did a comprehensive survey of all graduate and professional, most graduate and professional students in our email list sample. We got a great response rate for that sample. We have been in the process of analyzing all of that data since getting it in July, and we are getting ready to begin the follow-on project for that, which you have a presentation for this evening. And basically just a bunch of goals. We're trying to get all of the data for that and the reports to everyone as well as the campus very soon. We need to actually come up with specific target dates as a part of that. By the way, Milos, who you all meet soon. And I'm beginning the project management for the 2019 project. So where are we at? The assessment on GPSC governance, procedures, and policy as a goal that is coordinated with Derek, who's on the agenda for Council Government Affairs, another new executive board position. Basically, we need to engage in some self-assessment. It will help us meet our essential purpose and mission. And so through some review, some oversight of the procedures, the policies, the documents, the governmental documents, all of these different aspects through that executive director position, we can make sure that we are running as effectively and efficiently as possible. I would like, though, that assessment completed by April 1st so that we actually have some time to make any changes if it requires some constitutional or bylaw amendments or the addition of any new bylaws or amendments to the Constitution, I guess. Derek's going to get up, I guess, do a brief thing on it today. Increase our membership and participation in GPSC. Also associated with the new executive directorship for the executive board, the idea that we don't have someone dedicated to actual our member affairs. Whether that is actually recruiting and engaging members in Graduate and Professional Student Council, or even sort of the relations and engagement between persons that are even in council, and sort of just the development of persons, figuring out what people's interests are and getting them involved in the things that they're most interested in so that the experience you have in the Graduate and Professional Student Council can be as fulfilling as possible. Like, that should be one of our fundamental things that we can do. And hopefully, Council Member Affairs Director can help us realize that. My ideas on increasing our membership, I think it would be great if we could get 66% of the graduate and professional degree programs and certificate programs as members registered in the council. So I will say in the past couple of days I've been rethinking that and whether or not that's sort of a problematic thing to actually set a goal for, and so we can talk about it. Because with I originally wrote this goal before we changed the membership rules to the Constitution to be degree programs. And so if we had 66% of all programs, it would be a lot now. And we would potentially run into the issue of once we register members, if they're not at a meeting, we have quorum requirements for our meetings. And so it might actually make it very difficult to then achieve quorum if we registered 66% of all graduate and degree program representatives. It's like inside baseball stuff. We'll see about it. I would like to see our average attendance though get a little bit bigger. Last year, I think it was 28 or 29. I would like to see it at 31 this year. I think that's a very reasonable goal to set. And then ultimately, the thing that I'm actually most excited about is the idea of this 15 and 5 program aspect of what we can do in a very practical way. So we've got our core programs, the distribution of the student activity fees. We have our advocacy as well that we do. But apart from that, we have very little organizational activity or programming within the broader aspects of the university. And I see both aspects of the Graduate and Professional Student Council suffering as a product of that. We don't always have a lot of money to distribute as part of those programs. And when we don't have a lot of money to distribute for those programs, we don't get a lot of engagement to then use as a part of our advocacy. Even if we do have a lot of money to distribute as a part of those programs, that doesn't necessarily mean that we get substantive information and understanding about the challenges that students are facing as a part of their experience on campus. Moreover, we don't contribute anything to changing someone's experience as a part of the campus. Yes, we can solicit information. Yes, we can write a statement. Yes, we can submit it to persons who ultimately are the authority figures that are charged with the administrative oversight and delivery of those types of things. But we're not really participating in any kind of real, practical, everyday solution, even on small scales that can have massive impacts in somebody's day-to-day experience. I think that is a massive missed opportunity. And something that ultimately, in the biggest picture of things, has a lot to offer everyone that gets involved in the Graduate Professional Student Council, as well as everybody across the campus in general. And so this idea of 15 is 5 is 15 events drawn across 5 different categories. The idea of 1 award and recognition ceremony, which we actually are already in the practice of doing at the end of the year with our research awards, 2 research events, 3 panels, 4 workshops, and 5 collaborations. These goals are tied ultimately to the creation of a 4th position on the executive board for a director of campus and community affairs, who will oversee and assist the executive board with matters on these goals. So I will leave that there, and if we have any questions or comments or discussion or concerns or rejections or whatever you want to talk about in relation to the academic plan, hopefully everyone got the email that was requested at the end of the last meeting that I sent out to our membership role, so that you could see that in writing versus the presentation. On a personal note, I feel like I did a terrible job with that presentation, and I apologize. But I'll give us 5 minutes here for any questions or comments, or discussion, concerns. Yes?
I meant to mention this before, but I forgot. So
Yeah.
the 15 and 5, like, I like the idea, I like the vision. My concern is as someone who like did a lot of programming on campus professionally, like, I'm concerned with the amount maybe because I know that as a programmer, like it takes a lot of time to do that. And I'm a little worried that, you know, if something doesn't pan out, then all that work falls on that one person. And
Yes.
so I just don't know if maybe like, especially also because we're already in October. So I'm worried about like November and December being, you know, plus next semester timing. So I just wonder if maybe that's something that can get adjusted or if maybe not only adjusted as amount, but maybe like that person gets some level of committee work like from the constituency. It just seems like a lot to fall.
I agree. That's a lot to be asked of someone in 5 months. Because if you think about it, we have November, we have half of December, which we can't really ask much of people. And then we return in February, March, and April. And then May is also just dealing with the final. So that's 5 months to pack in 15 events.
Yeah, well, so with the executive director positions on the executive board, insofar that there's the community and campus individual that's charged with the oversight management of those goals for that 15 and 5. That does not mean that they are the sole accountable party for all of those. That means that they are basically overseeing it. So it's essentially the idea of trying to create some better division of labor and oversight for what we're trying to do than the idea of me trying to catch up with what might end up being 10 different individuals that I need to have constant correspondence with in the course of a week about planning 3 different events that are going to happen in the next month. It's not the idea that there's one individual necessarily planning and executing each event. It's the idea that there's one individual that is charged with then bringing back the updates and doing the active management of what might be 2 or 3 individuals helping coordinate those events to then tell the executive board, like, this is what's going on.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern is, as someone who programs, there is some level of accountability to that one person.
Yeah.
So say this table says they're gonna do something and no one does shit, it's still on me, right? And so that's what I think I'm concerned about, because literally as someone who had to do programming, I think that's what I'm most worried about.
Yeah.
And again, I like the idea of this group doing some level of programming. I'm concerned with the number.
Yeah.
Because as I've been thinking about it since our board meeting, I think that's a lot to ask of one person. Because again, yes, the hope is other people are doing it, but we all know that sometimes that labor falls on one person. Like, I'm being realistic because that's been me before.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, and so for me, it's more like I maybe we can rethink that one, and maybe just think of the timing right now. But I think that's the one thing I think I'm stuck on.
No,
And who's accountable for the labor?
Yes, I agree. Because the trying to accomplish 15 events is sort of construed in the idea of the full 10-month academic calendar. We are challenged by that. And then also the idea of the actual scope of what gets planned is a part of those. So the idea of 5 collaborations, it might literally be something as minor as the idea of we help some other organization stand out in the student center to raise awareness for something, and that we solicit involvement of our members. And it's just like, we can check the box on that in the sense of a collaboration if that's what we need to do.
Rachel?
So I'm the
sorry.
person.
Oh, sorry.
That's me.
Yeah.
And so as far as the structure of how I plan to sort of adjust campus and community affairs position, I'm not really looking to make it a full committee just because I already serve on. So I hope to ask for all ideas in terms of any of these 5 categories, and also just contacts in general for local community members and groups, and any funding opportunities, because some of we have to do a lot of money, to just be sent to me via email, and then I'll be the contact person to take it to people to discuss what's possible, what isn't. And I'll be asking for volunteers on an individual event basis, so that it isn't a committee, it isn't just me that will have all the work. Hopefully, the people who were interested in this idea in the first place, that will help us make sure that it gets accomplished. And we already are knocking out the awards and recognition ceremony. We have a couple ideas for on-campus workshops that kind of need to happen anyway. So it's possible, and I mean, any additional programming and organization connections that we can make is already going to be better than what we're doing. So we don't make all 15, more is better than last time. So
I don't want that.
But I also get what you're saying, why position yourself for failure?
Yeah.
Right? So why aim for 15 when realistically we only have 5 months to do this, and to collectively get the feedback, get the executive meeting going, and then we'll have another meeting on November 13th to finally discuss something, and then by the time it comes around, it's December and we're all in final speak. I don't think you should. And I don't think that's what we're saying, that 15 is an unrealistic goal. And if you reach that, great, but I don't think it's the goal to set or to promote.
And Rachel, I'm happy that you're doing it, honestly. I think my biggest concern is someone who's programmed on campus before. Like, I just worry. Like, it's a
if that's the expectation.
Yeah, it's mama bear. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I just don't want that to fall on you because I've seen that happen.
Because as of now, that'd be 3 events a month for what we have remaining.
But I support you because I know you're gonna
I would like to make a motion, since it's already 8:50, I would like to motion that we move down to the fee allocation board since that requires votes. And for those who are scheduled to leave or expected to leave at our typical time, it'd be nice to have a quorum for that, I mean.
So second, all in favor of that?
Sweet.
Any opposed? Seeing none opposed. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the fee allocation board met today and we reviewed 3 events. We did receive, so the first one, just in order of what we looked at. So the first group we met with was the Graduate Philosophy Union or Grad Philosophy Union. They recently had the event Building Bridges, and that took place in late October. They did get this information to us prior to that, but because of our meeting schedule, we weren't able to meet prior to the event. So we're looking at it retroactively. They had requested $500. This primarily was going towards speaker fees. So our speaker cost, and including lodging, speaker flight, as well as other fees, including reception, dinner, and whatnot. That already happened, and that some of these things didn't reach their totals of what was expected and what was collected thus far. We are suggesting to provide $450 of the $500 that was requested. So I make a motion that we provide the Grad Philosophy Union $450 at this time.
Motion seconded. All in
All in
favor?
favor?
Any opposed?
Abstentions? 2. Motion passes.
Motion passes. You have a second reading?
I have
Fab?
2 more.
2 more? 2 more.
All right. Next, we met with C4, which our critical forum, and C4 is a group here on campus that supports our arts and design. They have an event that's occurring right now, continuing through Friday, November 3rd. That is at the Glove Factory, and this is a juried exhibition. So they had a gentleman come in. And so if you want to attend on Friday is when they're going to have their closing night, and they will say who was elected or who was selected as far as the juried winners. The event's from 5 to 8, and they will announce the winners at 6:45. But this is pretty much, since the event is ongoing and they were able to collect funding from both the Fine Arts Committee as well as this Fine Arts Activity Fee, as well as some other resources. They've asked us to support this final closing event, and anybody who's familiar with the art world knows that that's always something that is very important in that celebration. So they have requested $350. At this time, we are suggesting that they receive $300 of that request. I now motion that we provide the critical forum, or also known as C4, $300 at this time. Second, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so we have motion passes. All right, next, and I did, in case anybody's here on behalf of, or is in relationship with the International Student Council, we received multiple applications from them for the year, but wanted to just address the event that's coming up the
Most
soonest.
immediate.
Most immediate, thank you.
Yeah.
Most immediate event, and so that we can have a large discussion on the other applications that they've provided. So they are hosting multiple events. They're going to be held at the boat dock on campus. They're having a fall feast, international fall feast. They also are planning for a spring and summer gathering there. For this, looking that they've asked for is $800. The hard cost of this is for the boat dock rental. I've attended these events in the past, and a lot of it's a food event, but a lot of it is potluck style. So people bring in the food and whatnot. And of course, they would like some assistance with that, but because we are limited and because of the amounts of requests that they put in as far as volume of events, we are recommending that we are giving them $200 at this time. The request was $800, and this is to cover the cost of the boat dock rental. which is the hardest fee cost that they have on their request. So at this time, I recommend $200. May I get a second?
Point of information. This is just for the one event.
One event.
Yeah. Is that a second?
They have requested, I mean, in total, what they were put in front of us would exceed, like, it would go reaching nearly $20,000. So there's no way that we would be able to fund $20,000 worth of things. So we have to think about what we can. And based on my experience of attending their events, I know that their event can be successful, but the hardest cost they have is for the boat rental or the facility rental. So a motion was on the floor. I got a second.
Yep, seconded.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. I will reach out to all these organizations.
Thank you much. All right. We'll return to the order of the agenda for the next item. It is presentation on the Graduate and Professional Student Council survey from Milos, who has been our research consultant, is an alumni here. So I'll hand it over to you for this presentation. As we're doing that, I would say, as we go through with the rest of the meeting, likely submit my reports as written. And so I'll send those along for the sake of time. But we all good? Yeah. Trying
So
10
I'm
minutes here.
Milos. I was here on graduate program in sociology, and this basically survey is something that Clay had an idea for some time to do. It's effectively a social survey of graduate students, graduate and professional students at this university. One of the main reasons why is this so important is because it provides a clear overview of what is happening among all the students, because all of you know individual things about your individual programs, about your colleges, about your circle of people, but very few people actually understand what's happening at the whole university, especially administration. And if some of you had a chance to be in meetings where administration had some of their marketing surveys, they're completely useless and provide no insight into what is happening at this university. And obviously, majority of the graduate and professional students that we interviewed actually do not believe that SAU is headed in some sort of right direction. So the main purpose of the survey is to generate actionable, detailed, and reliable insight in the state of graduate and professional students, and primarily to create a way for GPSC and administration to understand where to allocate funds, where to allocate resources, how to proceed, what are the things that are happening in a good way, what are the things that are happening in a bad way among graduate and professional students, and of course to do that longitudinally so we can follow what is actually happening, what is working, what is not working, and so on. The survey started last year. It went on with its ups and downs. In the end, we had ARC, Applied Research Consultants from university, do the survey, distribute the survey. That was positive in some way because it allowed us to have stronger credibility in the data that we got, but it also meant that we initially did not have the access to raw data, so that complicated our whole analysis plan and so on. And then we got some reports from them which were not on a satisfactory level. And then it was almost a whole month of negotiations with them, I think, back and forth with the reports and everything. And finally, we got the raw data somewhere in the July. However, another problem with the process on this one is that I actually had to stop working on it in the early September because of my visa status. So I will be leaving back home in 3 days. And yeah, we can expect this to full-blown continue in November. Some of the problems that we had were primarily logistical because although this response rate that we got is really good for other surveys of this type, we are not completely satisfied with it. ARC's emails were ending in spam. We did canvassing on campus and so on and so on and so forth. We had several delays, and one of the biggest problems that we had is because we got partial data from ARC because they did remove some demographic data, some identifiable data. So we have problems with gender and race and ethnicity, we don't have data for all participants. The survey was basically representative. Some of you might have done it. It has 6 modules that have, each module has about 2 to 3 subsections that are actually questions which form specific indices about items from that are important in student life. So faculty, courses, socioeconomic status and wellness, opportunities for professional development, scholarship support, and so on. The sample of how it looks like is this. So the 5 questions that are actually typical Likert type questions are evaluating faculty in different aspects, and then these 5 questions are actually summed up and we create an index. And what is great with those indexes is that we can actually compare them across the demographics, across the departments, across colleges, and so on, and we can identify certain differences. So here we see, for example, that faculty is rated pretty high on this index. So on these 5 questions across the board, white students, non-white students, and international students. However, obstacles are in primarily scholarship are things that are seen as a problem, not completely identical across all those 3 groups, but fairly so. One other thing that we can do is we can split it by gender. Look at it by the year at which you are at university. So we see that in the survey from 2018, male students who were on 2nd year were obviously having some much bigger issues than any other cohort of male students at SIU in a way, and things like that. We can also look at individual programs and see how they compare on those indexes, and then try to identify whether there are certain patterns that are actually systemic to colleges, to programs, to some other individual things. We can also do something which is pretty cool, and that is we have now, in a way, access not only to the way that money is allocated, but the way that money corresponds to the needs of graduate and professional students. So instead of just, I don't know, breaking down by gender, who got what scholarship, we can actually see who was requesting money for travels and who did not receive it, and if there is some differences. So here, for example, we see that female students on master studies are receiving somewhat lower amounts of money. It's questionable which of these things are statistically significant. That's why we need to do another one much better and have our access to raw data and higher response rate. The further steps are we have to finish the analysis. We need to work on advocacy, basically, and to put the results of this survey into good use to create concrete proposals. And finally, to develop the 2019 survey, which should be much better than this one. We should also want some of you, if you are interested, to join us and to help us on this. So basically, we are working with data, but there are many other aspects that you can contribute, writing up, analyzing things, design, things like that, or even community outreach, help with IT stuff, or whatever, really. The primary driver, paramount, is basically that we have to keep absolute integrity, security, and privacy of all the data that we are using, because it is very sensitive data, and some of the data that ARC had that we did not even receive are the open-ended questions, which reveal a lot and can be really useful, but is also essential to keep them private. Was it 5 minutes? No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was not.
It was 10 minutes.
Sorry.
Okay.
And so hopefully that give you a sense of what we're trying to do here with the Graduate Professional Student Survey, or the GPSS, as we like to call it. And one of the big factors of this, as far as Milos coming in, giving the presentation, is as we transition into completing the work on the last year's survey and go into the second year survey, we are looking for anybody that's interested, whether that is one of you or someone that you may know that might be interested in getting involved in the project, working on it. And in a lot of ways, we joke that it's sort of an instance of the blind man and the elephant. We knew that the project would be rather large and that we would have really really comprehensive information about graduate and professional student councils with this survey, but we did not know the extent to how big that actually has ended up. And so, I mean, basically, we're at the point where we know there is a pile of analyses that we are leaving on the table that we cannot do because it is unrealistic for us to be able to do with the 2-3 individuals that have been working on the project. And so anyone else that wants to get involved in it, is interested in ways that they can get involved in it, it is a very open call for those interested parties to make themselves known. And we'll try and find the ways to get them involved.
Yeah, and also in the 2019 survey, not just this one.
No, yeah, just not this one. Yeah. Next one. Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So, real quick, you had on the 4-up sheet, the 2-sided sheet, short description of a memorandum rephrased from what was distributed to the executive board about the creation of the new executive directors as a part of that executive board makeup. We have 2 agenda items for those 2. I don't know if Rachel wanted to get up and speak in more detail as to that. I did put in here the half sheet that you had.
So I'm really looking for any input. This, although it might be a lot of individual tasks, I think we can sort of make this as diverse as possible. Goals. So any ideas whatsoever, just shoot me an email. A little bit of work into it to the exec board. That's some programs.
Rachel? Any initial questions, comments with that? Like, I have any number of ideas that I'm gonna get you an email, or either we'll have a quick meeting or something. Because I mean, and there are those of you even in this room from the years prior that I know that there are things that you've brought up before that it's just like there are things that we can put to work within that idea. So
it's already really quick. We have the award ceremony covered. We've talked about panels or specifically workshops on different payment procedures. Because a lot of people are pretty educated as to what options you have at this university, provided your own situation, how exactly you go about that, and also just science communication in general, with how relevant it's just been in all politics and social anything today. We'll probably get a panel together to talk about that. And as far as collaborations go, I know there's a handful of not exactly departments, but just sort of institutions on campus that we don't really work with all that closely, that nobody really works with all that closely. So if anything international, I know reaching out to like the sustainability office to see if we can get them to sort of collaborate with us on something real small, to get a little bit more publicity out there at the university level. And mostly I'm looking for like community interactions and ideas for programming, just to see if we can sort of spread out a little bit further than just this.
cool. And then the other one that we have on the agenda is Director for Council Government Affairs. Derek, if you wanted to make any.
I'm not going to say the law student
Sure.
podcast for
Aspects?
government affairs.
We talked about it over summer, and it was entirely typecasted for the expertise and professionalism of our law students. That was intentionally done.
Okay, well, we'll take it in strides. So this position is really making sure that our internal policies are being followed and make sense. Like there's a lot of things in our Constitution that need updated, need deleted, we don't follow anymore. So this position is really about taking a wide perspective look at what we're doing as an organization and coming to the board and the executive board with solutions of how to change the Constitution, how to change the bylaws to more conform with what we want to do as an organization, what we currently do as an organization, and to remove, just some old skeletons that have been clanging around in the Constitution that don't make a lot of sense. So one of the main goals in this position is, as Clay said, around April, coming to report to the council saying, here's the changes we might need to make, here's the bylaws we might need to enact, and then discussing it as a board and deciding whether or not we want to pass that amendment to the Constitution, change language, etc., add something to the Constitution. So right now, my approach to it is taking a fine comb through our bylaws and Constitution, and not only looking at the incorrect grammar and punctuation, but taking out what we don't follow. So, and maybe suggesting some new things to make everything run more smooth. And that's my spiel.
Any initial questions, comments, contributions for Derek? And I'll point you to the part for the memorandum of these executive directors that is trying to express the intention of this position and those 4 criteria that we're meeting. And the notion that ultimately what this is formalizing a mechanism through which what have been executive board members already helping with the executive management and oversight of the Graduate Professional Student Council, doing so in well-defined and purposeful driven ways. We do have 2 other directors' positions that have yet to been fully appointed that, as we point out, our current executive board members have got a privy to as far as first dibs, as well as 2 to be determined with some guidance from the current vice presidents. I found that in the best interest as we've brainstormed on how to implement that idea. Any questions, concerns, comments on that area in general before we move on for the officer reports? Try and scurry along and get out of here. So, excellent. So, officer reports. You've already heard about interim president's comments as to the appointment of interim chancellor, full president, and a full chancellor for all our administrative business. Very quickly, I attended some other aspects in the sense of the Alumni Association. I haven't heard back formally as to the outcome of the scholarship application. And I've even called over there at this point. I'm still waiting to hear back exactly what's happened, whether they've even made a decision. So still pending on our $15,000 application for additional funding to support our CDRAs. And a lot of internal bureaucratic stuff in the development of the strategic plan, things like that. I have that written. If you would like it, I can send it out to the council. But in lieu of that and time, I'll leave my report at it and turn it over to Diana.
In favor of time, I have no report at this time.
Cool. Jordan?
The next graduate council meeting is this Thursday, and we have several resolutions to approve or reject RMEs. There's also a resolution in memorial of Montemagno. Clay and I are meeting with Dr. Wallace tomorrow to discuss the rest of this academic year, projects that are ongoing. And the last graduate council executive committee, really the highlight of that was Dorsey coming, and they already told you about that. So that's my report.
Thank you very much. We have already completed our portion of the committee reports. That'll put us on to the good of the order here. You have anything wish to offer from the floor, folks?
Once again, I just want to remind people of the event that's happening at the Glove. Is that, the Glove Factory. It's ongoing, but they have their ceremony or the closing evening on Friday from 8 to 5. From what I understand, it's a very outstanding exhibition.
That's 5 to 8, not 8 to 5.
What did I say? I meant to say 5 to 8.
So the DSA is having a announcement press conference thing on Thursday at 12:15 p.m. I believe it's going to be out in the student center. It's going to be raining, so we're trying to figure it out. But it's an announcement of a white paper about a tuition-free SIUC. So you can come and support it. It's cool.
What? DSA?
Democratic Socialists of America.
Ah, all right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Been seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Motion adjourned. Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, end it.